Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to the session. My name's Chris, and very shortly we'll be kicking off with our general agenda for the session today. I'd like to thank you all for joining me. This seminar is focusing on why you should start building your surveys in Microsoft Forms. Hopefully you like the title. This is one that I picked. I think a lot of people are really getting quite excited about Microsoft Forms, and I really want to show more people how good this tool really is. So I'll be doing a little introduction about that shortly. I'll also introduce myself for those who haven't met me. A few of the bonuses for this session as well. We're going to talk a little bit about a few opportunities that are available for me to discuss during this webinar, such as at Combined Knowledge, who is hosting and running this webinar today. We've got a few changes that are happening in our company, and we want to explain how those changes are going to deliver some benefits for you as our customer base. We also wanted to talk to you about how you can support the uptake of your Office 365 service like Microsoft Forms with our solutions such as Training Plus and Support Plus. And we'd also like to really boast how our modern training options are winning a combination for digital transformation and adoption. I know that sounds a lot of technical jargon, but we'll be walking through that after our main demonstration. For those lovely people who are sticking around till the end of the webinar today, we have a £50 Amazon voucher to give away. So we'll just be doing the giveaway right at the end of the seminar, just after we do the summary. So stick around if you want a chance to win. It's always lovely to have that in your pocket, isn't it? A nice big voucher. Certainly is. So just a little bit of an introduction to myself. My name is Chris Casangina, and I'm the Technical Content and Training Lead Manager at Combined Knowledge. I still haven't gotten used to that job title. It's a bit of a mouthful, but I've only just started that role this month. Predominantly, I'm an Office 365 product specialist. I've had lots of fantastic opportunities throughout this career working with different people, knowledgeable experts. I think Penny's on the session at the moment, actually. One of the things that I got the opportunity to do was work as a technical editor on the Microsoft Step-by-Step book series for SharePoint 2013 and 2016. So that was a absolutely brilliant experience working alongside professional authors around the SharePoint space. I also speak at conferences and community events. And just to prove that I don't completely focus my time on everything Microsoft, I've put a couple of random things on here. One thing that I like to do in my spare time when I get an opportunity to is a little bit of oil painting. So I've got one of my paintings that I've done at a train station just at the bottom of the screen there. And one other thing that I own is a lovely little Shiba Inu, which is a Japanese dog, which looks a lot like a fox, and I get a lot of weird comments about her on the streets every now and again. So that's a little bit about myself. Hopefully I'll get more and more familiar with you as we do more of these free webinars throughout the year. So I'm going to make it my priority to give you lots of these free webinars where I can indulge your knowledge with lots of useful insights that I've collected from our different customers. But I'd like to get straight into it. So let's talk about why you should start building your surveys in Microsoft Forms. This is probably one of the main reasons that you've wanted to jump into the seminar today. So I'd like to just really kick off straight away with the ideas behind this. So effectively, from my background, being more of a SharePoint specialist, there's been a few solutions around that we could use to build surveys in the past. Some of you might have used InfoPath. You may also know that InfoPath is becoming end of life in 2026. Microsoft will no longer support InfoPath. So you might have used that in the past for surveys. You might have also used, perhaps, to build a lovely survey, you might have used a SharePoint list. Microsoft are transitioning between classic and modern SharePoint experiences, and it seems that these classic SharePoint surveys are kind of disappearing. They're very much lurking in the background and haven't really been updated since 2007. So for us Microsoft users, we're sort of dropping our cards a little bit. We don't have a lot of aces up our sleeves when it comes to these services. So what do businesses do? Well, I've heard a lot in my classes about people saying, oh, we use SurveyMonkey, we use another service. And that kind of makes sense, doesn't it? A lot of situations call for people to be able to fill out surveys, and the easiest way to do that is through a web browser. So who cares if you click on a link and you go to a third-party tool and you fill out the survey over there? In the end result, you've got your content and you can work on it. Well, if you're using Office 365, you might already be aware that you have Microsoft Forms. You probably saw it pop up a couple of years ago and you thought, Forms? What's that? And if you have a look at it, it's for building quizzes and surveys. But one of the things that I want to justify is, does it have what it takes to run with the pack? We've got quite a lot of big operators out there for building surveys. Can Microsoft Forms fill that particular gap? So I'm here to show you why you should at least consider Microsoft Forms for designing surveys and quizzes. So first of all, how do we get to Microsoft Forms? If you go to www.office.com, this will take you to your Office 365 tenant. And once signed in, if you don't see Microsoft Forms on your home screen, one thing that you can do is you can click on the app launcher at the top left of the screen, and you might see Microsoft Forms here, which would be great. If you don't see Microsoft Forms, do not worry, it's not the end of the world. You can always go to All Apps, which is just at the bottom here, and you'll find it in there. So you just scroll down, and there's Forms. If you really, really like Forms, you can always pin it. So you can pin and unpin from your main app launcher, and that saves you a little bit of time getting to Microsoft Forms. Now, quite often you'll see this as you jump around Office 365, it will give you some sort of hints and tips. So it will tell you that with Microsoft Forms, you can create surveys, quizzes, and analyze your data. Sounds great. So what can you do? Well, to get started, it's very simple. Are you trying to accredit people's knowledge? If so, you can create quizzes where you can provide people with a score based on their general answers and choose a pass rate for your particular quiz. If you're just trying to capture information but not potentially measure how well someone has done in their contributions to the questions, then you could just do a new form, which is basically like a survey. Now, I don't want to do too much of a Blue Peter, which if you're joining us internationally is probably a bit of a UKism, but effectively here's one I've already started. I've made this one earlier. So this particular quiz doesn't have a lot of questions in it. You can put up to 100 questions in your survey, so you can put a fair amount. I think if you go overkill with your questions, it sometimes deters people from wanting to facilitate a survey. So there's a few tricks that I'll talk to you about which you can sort of dilute the amount of questions people need to engage with. So what you'll typically have is when you start your survey, you'll give your survey a name just at the top of the screen. You can potentially add a little subtitle, and you can even add a little image that appears at the top of the survey as well. And as you go down, you'll see these options to add questions. And the range of questions that you can add is the first thing that I want to show you some interest in. So if I click on Add Questions, never ignore the little ellipsis that appears at the end of the questions menu. A lot of good options appear in here. Now, it's interesting to say some of the features that Microsoft Forms was not initially released with, I provide Microsoft with some feedback from time to time, just using their general channels that you'll find in their products. And I said one of the things that they should consider is introducing a Likert scale. Likert scales are really useful. They allow us to effectively build questions that could potentially have multiple answers that require rating. So this is an example of a Likert scale here. If I just jump back to my slide, I describe a Likert scale as a professional and friendly way to acquisition detail of people. So if you have a question, for example, my joke question is, what is the idea of your office tidiness in the different spaces around your office? And we've got messy, okay, tidy, and spotless for our canteen, breakout areas, reception, hallways. So if you get the idea of if you wanted to say in general, what do you think of the following products? What do you think of the following areas? What do you think of the following services? A Likert scale is ideal for that. And the great thing is that you don't, when you go into this, you can sort of delete these columns. You don't have to have 5 or 4 or 3. You can reduce this down, or you can create additional options. So that gives you some variety in the way that you approach these particular questions. Now, a Likert scale is one quite interesting question format. Another one that I quite like is this one. So this is the Net Promoter Score, which is actually something that's more commonly known in sort of different general survey building. So the Net Promoter Score offers a customer experience metric. So in general, if you, and I'll put this in the little chat window, so those of you who are attending the seminar live today could potentially have a click on this link and have a look at it. So I've just put the source link here. And effectively, the idea behind the Net Promoter Score is you ask people to give a scale of 1 to 10, but in the background, the system knows that if you're rating something between 0 and 6, you're probably a detractor. You probably had a negative experience. If you're 7 to 8, you're probably passive. If you're 9 to 10, you're a promoter. So that effectively means that we can, through the metrics that are offered after we start to get our results, start to get an understanding of who's going to actually sort of benefit or promote the general aspect of this question. So that's quite a cool little question, and we'll see how that benefits us in our metrics shortly. Another thing that I quite like is it's quick to build. So as you're building your questions, it provides you with kind of options to auto-define your selectable criteria. So let's say, for example, as part of my question here, I've said, have you ever accidentally made a mess of an office space? You know, you always knock your tea or, you know, drop something on the floor and you're thinking, yeah, I probably have done that. The next question I want to add is, did you clean it up? That's an interesting one. So add a question. Let's have a choice question, and we'll say, did you clean up the mess after you made it? Okay, now you'll see here, this is what I quite like about the system. Can you see that it's sort of saying, so add yes, no, and maybe? I don't think maybe is quite an approach that we can take with cleaning up a mess. Did you clean it up? I don't know, maybe. It's not the right one. Now you can add your own options, of course. You can say, you can type in your own values, but actually you can do yes, you can do no, and you can quickly build this survey up. So that makes it a little bit quicker for you to build a survey result. Now, another thing that I push to Microsoft's feedback, and if you have feedback that you want to push to Microsoft, click on the ellipsis at the top right of the screen and choose feedback. So as well as mentioning Likert scales, one of the things I liked about SharePoint's survey system is it had branching logic, i.e. if you answer a specific question in a certain way, you can get pushed to a different question. One thing you'll notice in this ellipsis menu is the option branching, and what that means is as long as you've built out your questions, you can choose a linear path between a yes, no, or a multiple approach answer and then send them to another particular question. So let's say, for example, down here, we say, have you ever accidentally made a mess of the office space? So if we choose yes, then maybe we send them to question 5. If we choose no, well, then maybe that's it. That's the end of the questionnaire, or maybe we push them to a different question. So we can use branching logic to potentially not present people with questions, and that doesn't overburden them with the amount of questions that they need to complete on your questionnaire. So let's give this a shot. So we go to branching, and this is showing us the different questions that we have. And this works really well with questions that have multiple choices. So it says if we go to yes, which question do we go to? So let's say that if question 4 is answered, yes, we did make a mess, we want to go to question 5. So we just have a look in here. And we'll select that question. So I might have a few more questions to go after this, so maybe I'll skip. If they say no, maybe I'll skip to question 6. I don't have an additional question, but that's fine for now. So once you've done with your branching logic, you just click on the little back arrow at the top of the screen. Okay, so that's something I really like. Branching logic is a way of reducing the amount of questions people need to interact with that aren't necessary. The other thing I like is internal and external sharing, and the option to allow anonymous options as well. So one of the other things I highly recommend is when you're designing your questionnaire, pay attention to the ellipsis at the top right of the screen. There is a settings menu there that's certainly worth paying some attention to. One thing that you can notice is that you could actually specify here that anyone with the link to this survey can respond, i.e. you could pass this to an external candidate outside your organization and they'll be able to participate with your survey. If we choose for just internal nominations, one of the things we have the option to do is record the name, which is selected by default. We could deselect that to create an anonymous survey so we don't collate the users' names. We can additionally provision that only one user can provide one result as well. The other thing I quite like is the ability to control the way that people can respond to your survey. So let's say, for example, that you wanted to take your survey offline, stop people from providing a response. So you could actually turn off accept responses, and that means that they won't be able to contribute further responses with that option deselected. You could also nominate start and end date. So if you nominate an end date, that automatically shuts down the responses for you. One of the other things that we've also got the option to do is shuffle our questions. So if you shuffle the questions, that could be quite useful in a scenario where we say to people, oh, fill out this questionnaire. And they come back and say, oh, the answer to C is F. The answer to D is A, and when people start sharing that information, this might be accrediting them a score, so they may be cheating. So at least we do shuffle questions, we can sort of stop that potentially from happening. The other thing is that you can get notifications around this as well. So you can receive a notification to send a receipt to the person that contributed towards the survey response. So that gives them a little notification that their receipt of their contribution has been received. And we can also get an email notification of each response as well. So that's quite nice for the person that designs the survey. So lots of nice options in there, certainly worth taking a little bit of a look at. And there's no doubt that, in my mind, that Microsoft will enhance that in months to come. One of the things I also want to sort of talk about is mobile support as well. Because this is pretty much a very modern tool, if you click on the little preview button at the top of the screen, this is what your survey will look like if opened in the web browser. But if it's open on a mobile phone, it will look like this. And it's really good at condensing down the specialized questions. So this is our Likert scale, and we can sort of break down those questions bit by bit. So it doesn't become fiddly, it just is fairly normal to use. We've got this nice little section here where you can sort of drag and drop or move these questions up and down. So this gives us our questions in an order. So that works quite well on a mobile phone as well. So definitely a really good selection of interaction that we can get from our mobile experience, just as well as our desktop experience as well. The other thing you may notice at the top of the screen, there are two tabs, questions and responses. So if we go over to responses, what you'll notice is that the average time to complete this survey is about 15 seconds. And the survey is currently active, which means we're taking responses and 5 people have responded. I think the analytics are really good here. So it gives me a breakdown of the questions in quite a meaningful way. So I can use my mouse cursor to mouse over these results and get an idea of what people's opinions are. So I think most people think the smoking area is spotless, which is quite good. As we go down, remember that I mentioned that we've got that sort of NPS rating here. So our promoters and our detractors, it's giving us a general understanding of that. So it's saying here you can sort of see this in more details, and it's showing me all of the people who have responded to my survey. Sadly, it's always me. But I think to rally a load of people to provide responses for my survey about half an hour before the session was a bit tricky. But you can see that this is all really nice and interactive, very visual, quite easy to understand. This is a new question, so it doesn't have any results yet, so we should be able to see that when it's a little bit more populated. For those more discerning people, you can always open in Excel as well. So if you choose to open in Excel, your web browser will launch the Excel client application that you have installed on your laptop or computer, where you can actually create your own pivot tables and charts based on the information that's found in the Excel spreadsheet. So if you feel like you want to drill deeper into your data, that's a very effective way to do so. The last thing that I'll mention is quite useful. If you haven't gotten into Microsoft Flow yet, it's well worth getting involved. The main reason for this is that you could start to trigger business processes of certain choices that are made in the actual survey itself. So let's say, for example, that if someone said that, let's say they rated their overall experience as 3 or less, we could actually design a workflow to actually send us a notification if someone's particularly unhappy with the cleanliness of our offices. The way to achieve that is that if you opened up Microsoft Flow there are lots of little templates that you can get that link directly into Microsoft Forms that the community and Microsoft have created. However, if you wanted to maybe start something from scratch, so I'm going to create a blank flow. And what this allows me to do is automate a business process. And there are particular ways that you can do this. Now, there are lots of different triggers that can get your automated process started. So one of the triggers is Microsoft Forms. And you can see Microsoft Forms here. And it says that it can start a workflow whenever a new response is submitted. So I can choose that as my trigger. And it says, which form do you want to use? So I've got my free webinar. I can add another step. And then what do I want to do? So I might have a look at Microsoft Forms again and decide that I want to get the response for a particular session. And we might pick a specific response ID. And then what we could do is we could start to analyze the information around the result. So I might home in on a specific question and start to specify if that value is less than, let's say, for example, 3. Then we could potentially send an email notification to maybe Microsoft Teams and let an executive group know that someone's particularly unhappy with the cleanliness of the office. Although I'm not going to build this all out, obviously we want to make sure that this demo is quite concise. It's quite nice to know that these opportunities are there to really expand Microsoft Forms to make it more business specific. So that was a little bit about Microsoft Forms. I'm hoping that you enjoyed the demonstration. Obviously, we can't spend too much on that, but hopefully it's whet your appetite. There is one thing that I hope Microsoft do resolve fairly quickly, is that effectively, if you half complete a large form, you can't really come back to it and finish their response later. So it's kind of like a bit of an all or nothing situation at the moment. So who knows, that may be something that's coming soon. But hopefully that's something that they will resolve at some point. One other thing that I'll just quickly mention is that there has been some exciting news in the realm of Microsoft Forms, which is there is potentially some news that arrived on the 13th of February, which was Project Shimla, which is apparently in spring 2019, there's going to be a Microsoft Forms Pro option. There's not a lot of information. I'm struggling to sort of grab all of the information for this, but I'll provide you with a link in the chat window to further content if you would like to have a read of the article itself, which is being kept up to date as more information comes in. So if you have a look at the chat window, or if you pause the video, if you're watching this recording later, you can pop the link in. But the general idea is that it says that you can create actionable feedback around customer feedback in real time. So it sounds like maybe there's some more options inside the questions to trigger certain events if certain scenarios within the question are met. The other thing it says is it works with Dynamics 365 and the Common Data Service. It also works with the Power platform, which is Power BI, Power Apps, and Flow. We already know there's good integration in those products already, so it's interesting to see what Microsoft will be bringing that as an enhancement to that. And another thing that they say is that it can adhere to your compliance, security, and privacy levels. So these are just bits of information that are kind of falling out of the conversation around it, but hopefully more detail will come. So if you're liking Microsoft Forms, certainly get stuck into it. But if you're thinking, how do we roll something like Microsoft Forms out to the organization, then that's where we're here to help. At Combined Knowledge, we understand that potentially getting people to adopt not just solutions like Microsoft Forms, but things like Microsoft Teams, SharePoint, all of these large products, the business wants people to be successful with them. They want them to get the most use out of them, but training an entire workforce one by one or in groups can be quite expensive and quite time consuming. So we've got things like Training Plus and Support Plus to help you out with those particular scenarios. What I'll do is I'll show you a brief example of how we could potentially resolve two different scenarios in regards to our support products. So let's say, for example, that Microsoft Teams is new to your organization and you're interested in knowing how to maybe create a quick team. Now, the nice thing about this is that in Microsoft Teams, there's Tbot, and Tbot's quite a useful little tool for sort of learning how to use Microsoft Teams. But the problem is Tbot doesn't exist for all of these different applications. So you might want an application that covers all of your Office 365 experience and provides you with just-in-time support. So my general idea is I'm in Teams, I want to create a new team. How do I do it? So one of the things that we have is Support Plus. So Support Plus is like your help desk for Office 365. So rather than calling the support team and asking them, hey, I've got a particular problem with Microsoft Teams, can you help me? You could go directly into Support Plus, have a look at our navigation or search for a particular topic of interest. And the idea behind this is it provides you with step-by-step support on how to achieve your goal, tips as well. And if you can't particularly get to your objective by following the simple steps, then we provide you with more detail and also a support video to allow you to watch a particular example. The idea about this is escalated support. So if you're someone who can literally look at a couple of steps and get back to work quickly, you've spent probably 10 seconds of your time resolving your own issue rather than calling the service desk, potentially having your call logged, and then having to sort of wait for the result. And like I said, if you don't quite get the steps, you can look at the details. If you want to see a video example, we've got a little short inline video. Now, these videos aren't narrated, so you can watch them in an open office environment, and there are hundreds of different topics for each Microsoft Office application in Office 365. So if you're looking for a unified tool to basically offload a lot of your support calls from the help desk and get people to serve themselves, Support Plus is the idea behind that. But this isn't really a training solution, it's to get people back to work by answering their own questions. If I really wanted to learn about Microsoft Teams, for example, sit on a full classroom experience, one thing that I'd do is I'd use the Training Plus product. So Training Plus is our high quality classroom scenarios built into on-demand learning videos. So in this particular example, we could pursue perhaps Microsoft Teams. And let's say that we wanted to let's get started with Microsoft Teams. And I'll just mute the video. And perhaps we'll go to navigation in Microsoft Teams. So we'll jump straight to a particular support video. So the idea about this is that rather than you can train your champions on how to use Microsoft Teams in more formalized training, but support the rest of the business might come from something like this, bite-sized nuggets of information to help people learn more about Office 365. So we could jump a little bit further into Rob's demonstration here. And what you'll find is a high quality video which will basically explain the dynamics of the subject matter. And again, there are hundreds of different videos to provide support from anything from Microsoft Excel all the way up to what we're looking at here with Microsoft Teams. We endeavour to keep all of this content as up to date as Office 365 is itself. So these should be effectively like for like with your training environment. I just noticed a little graphic there of my own dog, which was quite funny. So we'll talk about how that fits into a bigger picture in regards to your Office 365 support and training rollouts in a short amount of time. But let me just explain that Training Plus is evolving as well. And soon we'll have Microsoft Forms for Training Plus. So all of the knowledge that we've imparted onto you this afternoon, you could potentially go into more detail in our Training Plus solution. Also coming soon, and this is something that I'm working on at the moment, is Office Pro Plus, or what some of you might know as Office 2019. The latest version of Microsoft Office, Excel, Word, PowerPoint, Outlook, is coming to Training Plus as well. We do have Office 2016, so if you are using Office 2016, that is currently available, but we're producing all the latest stuff once Microsoft released that new icon pack for Microsoft Office, and I have seen that knocking about in a few tenants, so it is coming soon. We're working on SCORM as well, so if you have your own learning management system, would like something like Training Plus to accompany your existing learning management system's content, then get in touch with us. Our content is being currently transversed into a SCORM format. We've got quite a lot of SCORM content already, so if that does interest you, do get in touch with us. One other thing I'd like to mention whilst we're talking about what's new, we've been listening to a lot of the feedback that's coming to Combined Knowledge around classes that people are interested in. One thing that we're sort of getting our teeth into at the moment is more of a modern branding class for Office 365's SharePoint Online. So our author for this particular course, Caroline Lee, who's one of our Combined Knowledge instructors, she has about 10 years experience working with SharePoint and also as a web designer as well for a small and larger organizations. So Caroline's currently working on potentially showing you how to implement a level of branding for things like your modern team sites and communication sites, things like distribution through hub sites, as well as branding down at the list and library level. This, of course, can get quite advanced. It does include some of the JSON language that effectively we can use down in the list and library level, but it's certainly going to be a very interesting looking course. So keep an eye on our website for more information about the SharePoint Online branding class. Okay, so that's a little bit about what's coming. Just a few things just to finish this webinar up with. So we want to just basically mention to you that we've talked a little bit about Office 365 this afternoon. So we had a look at Microsoft Forms. And one of the things that as businesses start to explore all of these new applications in Office 365, you might see a lot of new things like Sway, Stream, maybe haven't been using Yammer before, and it can sometimes be a big case of what to use and when. How do we roll out something as big as Office 365? I mean, I spent about 25 minutes just talking about forms, and I could probably spend hours more still discussing it. So one of the things that Combined Knowledge is working with different companies in doing is helping you with your strategy of rolling out something as big as Office 365. It's not just something that you can switch on and expect people to use. So some of the ways that we're winning the campaign in digital transformation is some of our sort of blended solutions where we work with you and your organization to provide you with champion level training. We nominate, or we look at your nominated people for potentially supporting and being advocates for Office 365 in your business. We provide them with the level of knowledge that they need to support your various departments and the success of your Office 365 adoption. And combining that with things like Support Plus to reduce the hit on your service desk for just-in-time support, and with improving on-demand training through Training Plus, we're finding that a lot of organizations that we're working with are really reaping the benefits of Office 365. We've been managed to scrape up some metrics from some of the customers that we've worked alongside with, and we're getting very positive feedbacks for a lot of the projects that we're working on. One of the more recent projects that we sort of finished last year was around the deployment of Office 365. And this is just an idea of some of our champions training that we delivered to the business in that particular organization. And the overall session score was very high, and the overall learning effectiveness was just as high. So it's really good to see that these particular plans are actually being well received by the business. But sometimes these little bar charts don't really sort of resonate or hit home. So sometimes it's good to home in on some of the feedback that we receive during some of these rollout projects. So these blended solutions can resolve in things like people saying it's great to see collaboration in action. These hands-on sessions really got people familiar with the products. One champion mentioned that they'll be required to teach others about Office 365, and now will be able to do it well. That's very gratifying as a trainer myself to hear things like that. I always thought that Microsoft was complicated. Today I learnt that it's actually simple. I think everyone has their own sort of opinions on Microsoft products, but that's a really good one to hear. Well structured, session was very interactive. Interactive sessions helped massively, so we can see that as a trend that people like to be hands-on. A great pace and delivery, best applications course I've attended for a long time. That's a very, very nice bit of feedback to have, and that was from actually rather a senior member of staff as well. So get in touch with us at Combined Knowledge. We're here to help you with your adoption and rollout of Office 365 within your organization. And even if you've gone live, we can do ongoing support with things like workshop training and also things like Training Plus to support the go live. To make sure that we're keeping up with demand, it's good to hear that Combined Knowledge is changing, bringing more benefits to you. So we've got a new trainer on staff at Combined Knowledge, an Office 365 solutions specialist, Yvonne Wright. Yvonne's basically had a huge amount of experience working for many years as a consultant in both the public and private sector. So we're delighted to bring such a knowledgeable expert with real world experience directly into our training team. Some of you also may be familiar with Katie Walters. She's returned to Combined Knowledge as a business development manager. So Katie will be supporting existing and new customers with their training and adoption requirements. She's incredibly capable, a very experienced professional who we're very happy to have rejoining our team at Combined Knowledge as well. A few other things that might benefit you. If you are already subscribing to Training Plus or have basically enrolled into some of our training classes via Skills Pipe, it's good to know that our content is kept up to date. We have roughly about a 2-month review schedule of all of our courses and Training Plus and Support Plus content to make sure it's as up to date as possible. We understand that businesses often worry about content becoming out of date, so at Combined Knowledge we ensure that our content is kept as up to date as possible. Another thing that might benefit you if you're interested in learning in fantastic tools such as Power BI, Flow and Power Apps, we have a new data expert track, which is a 5-day course. It consists of 2 days of Power BI, 1 day of Flow and 2 days of Power App. If you think that sounds really cool, definitely have a look at our website for the new data expert track. If you're interested in maybe cherry picking some of those, maybe you're just interested in Flow or just Power Apps, you can actually just book onto the individual courses as well. But we offer the 3 together as an expert track. As we mentioned, Combined Knowledge is offering blended approaches to your training, so we can sit down with your organization face to face and potentially discuss courses designed specifically for your user base. One of the things that we're doing as well more recently is creating custom Training Plus videos. So you saw my demonstration earlier with my colleague talking about Microsoft Teams. We can actually create bespoke training products for you. So through Training Plus, we could actually have a selection of your own videos recorded in your own environment, ensuring that we have your business mantra and any customizations that will make the training relevant to the rollout for your organization. So customization is always key for the success of Office 365 rollouts. Another thing that's finally worth mentioning is Microsoft training vouchers. These are often provided as part of an onboarding process of Office 365. It's worth knowing that you can actually spend your software assurance vouchers on training and adoption products from Combined Knowledge. So again, you can always get in touch with us if you have excess Microsoft Assurance training vouchers. We can always look at using some of those vouchers to train up your key staff. Wow, okay, so we managed to get to the end of that. I think I probably spent more time than I should have on Microsoft Forms, but I absolutely love the product. I think it's well worth discussing. But if you like the webinar, please tune in for our next webinar that I'll be running in this free webinar series. I've roped my colleague Caroline into that webinar. She's going to be basically joining me in a two hosted webinar. So myself and Caroline talking about businesses that have literally just gone live with Microsoft Teams. Quite often there's a little bit of resolve in the business, trying to understand where to use and how to use Microsoft Teams, and quite often it's sort of pushed out to the business with no general understanding as to how to use it. So we're going to be making that the theme of our webinar. So if you're new to Teams and or you know an organization that's new to Teams, that webinar is going to be very valuable to you. So we'll give you a bit of orientation, we'll talk about a bit of the terminology, and we'll talk about how to get started in Teams and how to make the best use of it in the shortest amount of time. So keep an eye out for our upcoming information about our webinars. Additionally, I'm also campaigning for ideas on classes that you feel don't exist. As a content specialist, I'm always got my ear to the ground trying to work out which classes people don't see in general that they might be quite interested in doing. We've got a large array of courses, so you might find that if you go to the Combined Knowledge website, there are Microsoft courses that might suit you, but let us know if there's something there that you don't see. If you contact us at sales@combined-knowledge.com or contact us via phone on the information found below, let us know if there are any courses that you don't see in our portfolio, and we'll look at potentially designing a course around those particular themes. So we're always interested in seeing where the demand is. One other thing I'll just mention, I'll be doing Q&A in this session, so in a second rather. So if you have any questions about what you've seen about Microsoft Forms or any of the sort of support or training products that we've demonstrated, do get in touch with me through the Q&A window or through the chat panel. But one thing I'll just mention is for those, I've got 39 people, so that's not too bad. For those of you who are in the webinar at the moment, what I'd ask you to do is actually, if you would like a chance of winning a £50 Amazon voucher, simply just go into the questions panel. So you can see the questions panel that you can ask questions in. The idea behind this is that we'd like to reward people who stuck with us through the whole webinar. So if you do actually put your email address followed by #forms. So in my example, sales@combined-knowledge.com /forms. That will basically enter you into a competition to win the £50 voucher. What we'll do is we'll collate users that have provided that information in the questions panel, and those who have done so, we will put into a randomized draw, and then we'll pull out someone from the hat, and we'll get in contact with you, hopefully either today or at the latest tomorrow morning, to provide you with your Amazon voucher code, which you can use to buy whatever you fancy. So do make sure you enter yourselves into the draw. So like I say, if you go into the questions panel and just provide us with that information, so just your email address and then space #forms, that will be the value that will enter you into the draw. So I can see lots of people entering that in now. Ideal, thank you very much. So what we'll do is perfect. We'll get you guys sorted. Okay, so I'll just wrap up this webinar and then I'm going to do the Q&A. So thank you very much for joining the seminar. Look forward to seeing some of you in our next seminar. So thank you very much for attending. Hopefully it's been nice and useful for you. If you've left a question, I'm now going to go through the Q&A section just to answer any questions that we have around that factor. So thank you very much.